The sound in the camp was different now. Tisserah had heard laughter only days before when trumpets first called them to move, but now there were voices of irritation and discontent. The manna still covered the ground each morning, but the people no longer greeted it with gratitude. She watched neighbors shake their heads and speak of Egypt as if it had been a pleasant memory. Some even described the meals they used to eat there, fish, cucumbers, onions, as though slavery had been a minor inconvenience compared to the autonomy in the wilderness. Tisserah knew it was dangerous talk, but it spread quickly. Complaint, she realized, was like smoke. Once it starts rising, it fills every tent. At night, she heard Moses walking through the camp. His steps were slow, his shoulders heavy. He stopped near a family's tent where the voices were weeping were the loudest. For the first time since leaving Sinai, Tisserah saw in him not command, but exhaustion. He looked upward and whispered words she could not hear. The next morning, she would learn that even Moses had cried out to God, saying that the burden was too heavy for him. She wondered if even prophets could feel that kind of weariness. Well, welcome to Whole Bible Study with your host, me, Tad Inoue. In the last episode, we read Numbers chapter 11, where Israel's frustration with the hardships of wilderness turned into open complaint. In this study, we'll examine why this event mattered so deeply, what it reveals about human behavior under pressure, and what it teaches about leadership and divine response to discontent. The story begins shortly after Israel's departure from Mount Sinai. They had been camped there for nearly a year, and now, only a short distance into the desert, discontent erupts. The text says, quote, "The people complained about their hardships in the hearing of the Lord." In Hebrew, this verb for complain does not mean mild dissatisfaction. It refers to a public protest. An open rejection of God is leading them. The people moved from dependence to defiance. In response, God's anger is described as katzef, a burning indignation, and a consuming fire appears at the outskirts of the camp. This sort of intense incident establishes a pattern that will define much of the wilderness narrative that follows. From Numbers chapter 11 through 21, the text enters what scholars call the wilderness narrative cycle. This literary section of the book records repeated episodes of rebellion and renewal as Israel journeys toward the Promised Land. Each story follows a similar pattern. The people complain, God responds with discipline and mercy, and leadership is tested in the process. Understanding that structure helps us see why chapter 11 is so significant. It begins a new phase of Israel's history, one defined by tension between divine faithfulness and human instability. The next episode in the chapter focuses on food. The manna that had sustained Israel since Exodus 16, simple, consistent, and nourishing, had become the object of their dissatisfaction. The text says that, quote, "the rabble among them," unquote, began to crave other food. The word for crave is hitava, meaning intense desire or longing. It comes from the same root as the noun ta'ava, which is sometimes used in scripture for lust or appetite that distorts judgment. Their craving spreads quickly through the camp as the people begin to recall Egypt with selective memory. They say, "We remember the fish we ate in Egypt at no cost, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now we have lost our appetite. We never see anything but this manna." This passage provides one of the clearest examples in Scripture of what modern psychology would call, quote, nostalgic distortion. Under pressure, people often idealize the past because it feels safer than uncertain present. Egypt, which had been a place of forced labor, is now remembered as a place of abundance. The contrast reveals a fundamental crisis of trust. The people are not simply hungry, they are reinterpreting history in a way that justifies rebellion. The text pauses to describe manna in detail. It was like coriander seed, pale in color and tasted like something made with olive oil. Each day, the people gathered it, ground it, and prepared it into cakes. The emphasis on description reminds us that manna was not inadequate. It was sufficient and stable. The problem lies in perception, not provision. God's anger at this moment is not insecurity, but moral offense. The craving exposes a refusal to accept divine order. Baruch Levine, in his commentary on Numbers, observes that the people's demand for meat symbolizes the rejection of God's structure of dependence. They are not requesting sustenance. They are demanding autonomy. Their appetite becomes rebellion in practice. At this point, Moses himself begins to reach a breaking point. Verse 10 says that Moses heard the people weeping throughout their families, each at the entrance of their tent. The Lord became exceedingly angry, and Moses was deeply troubled. His words to God are among the most vulnerable in all of Scripture. Quote, "Why have you brought this trouble on your servant? What have I done to displease you that you put the burden of all these people on me?" Unquote. Moses compares his responsibility to carrying a child, saying, "Did I conceive all these people? Did I give them birth?" The image communicates exhaustion so complete that leadership feels impossible. Jacob Milgrom notes that Moses' words here are not rebellion but transparency. Unlike the people's protest, which denies God's faithfulness, Moses' prayer admits human limitation. His honesty is not punished but answered. God responds by sharing the weight of leadership. The Lord instructs Moses to gather 70 elders already recognized for wisdom and integrity. God tells Moses that he will take some of the ruach, the spirit that rests upon Moses, and distribute it among them. This act demonstrates a critical biblical principle. Divine authority is not intended to isolate one person, but to be shared among many for the good of the community. When the Spirit rests on 70 elders, they begin to prophesy. 2 men, Eldad and Medad, who had remained in the camp, also received the Spirit and began to speak. Joshua, concerned about order, urges Moses to stop them. Moses replies, "Are you jealous for my sake? I wish that all the Lord's people were prophets, and that the Lord would put his Spirit on them." This statement anticipates a major trajectory in biblical theology. Gordon Wyndham notes that Moses' wish foreshadows later prophetic visions, such as Joel's promise that God's Spirit would one day be poured out on all people, and its fulfillment described in Acts chapter 2. What begins in Numbers 11 as a response to administrative exhaustion becomes the seed of universal spiritual participation. After the appointment of the elders, the narrative turns back to the people's craving. God tells Moses that he will provide meat, not for a day or two, but for an entire month. And, quote, "until it comes out of your nostrils and you loathe it," unquote. The language is intentionally vivid to convey moral consequence. Moses questions the feasibility of such abundance, asking how this could happen in a barren desert. God replies, "Is the Lord's hand too short?" This phrase, common in Hebrew idiom, means is the Lord's power limited? The expression asserts divine capability in contrast of human doubt. A wind then drives quail from the sea, covering the area around the camp. Each person gathers an enormous amount, but before the meat is even consumed, divine judgment falls. A plague strikes the people, and the place is named Kibroth Hadavah, meaning graves of craving. The name functions as what scholars call an etiology, a narrative explanation for a place name that preserves its moral lesson. The graves themselves become symbols of what happens when desire overrides trust. Now, theologically, this chapter teaches several essential principles. First, complaint is not inherently sinful. The difference lies in intention. Moses' words are lament directed to God. The people's words are accusations spoken against God. The former expresses dependence, the latter expresses defiance. Second, gratitude and trust form the foundation of covenant life. Israel's problem is not hunger, but the refusal to believe that God's provision is enough. And third, leadership within God's community is designed to be shared. No individual, however gifted, is meant to bear the full spiritual and emotional weight of a nation alone. The distribution of the Spirit among the 70 elders establishes a pattern later mirrored in Israel's prophetic institutions and in the shared leadership of the early church. From a historical perspective, the idea of complaint against deity was not foreign in the ancient Near Eastern world. The Mesopotamian and Egyptian texts, individuals often lamented before their gods when suffering struck. However, those laments were formal and ritualized, intended to restore harmony through prescribed words. Israel's complaint in Numbers 11 is distinct in that it is spontaneous, communal, and relational. It reflects a covenantal dynamic in which honesty is possible but rebellion is not tolerated. The same God who allows lament refuses contempt. From a literary perspective, this chapter marks the beginning of the wilderness narrative cycle. The structure of these episodes, complaint, divine response, discipline, and renewal, serves to highlight God's constancy against human instability. It also demonstrates that divine anger and mercy are not opposites, but partners in shaping a people capable of covenant faithfulness. Finally, the graves of craving serve as a memorial of misplaced desire. The narrative warns that unexamined appetite can destroy the very community it seeks to satisfy. Israel's failure is not simply physical greed, but theological misunderstanding. To demand more while despising what has been given is to redefine goodness on human terms. The result is alienation from both provision and provider. For modern readers, this passage remains relevant. It teaches that dissatisfaction often grows not from need, but from fatigue and comparison. It reminds leaders that spiritual work must be shared, not hoarded, and that even honest weariness can become a starting point for new empowerment. Most of all, it reveals that God's patience extends even unto frustration. He meets rebellion with discipline, but he meets exhaustion with help. Numbers 11 is not primarily a story of punishment. It is a study in divine pedagogy, the way God teaches through consequence. It shows that gratitude sustains community, humility sustains leadership, and trust sustains faith. The God who judged Israel at Kibroth Hattaavah is the same God who sent his Spirit to 70 elders so that burden could become fellowship. Justice and mercy move together. Thank you for joining me for this deep dive into Numbers chapter 11. If this study helped you understand Scripture more clearly, share it with a friend or leave a note. Your encouragement supports Mustard Seed Ministries and Bible Building Podcast. You can find more information on how to support through Patreon linked in the description. We may learn from Israel's story. May we learn from Israel's story to recognize complaint when it begins in our own hearts and turn it quickly into honest prayer. God still hears, still provides, and still leads his people with patience and grace. This is Tad Inoue. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.